Hi, everyone. I'm Cassy Adams, and I'm the Care Services Director for the ALS Association, Oregon and Southwest Washington chapter. Looking at all of you right now and saying hello and hoping everybody's doing well. Today we are on our third of our Facebook Live educational series, and I'm really excited to introduce Kate Morris, who is joining us today. And Kate is going to be focusing on strategies and ideas for coping with the many unknowns that people are dealing with right now with COVID, but also as it pertains to life with ALS. So just a quick little biography about Kate, and then I will turn it over to her and have her share some great information with us today. So Kate Morris is a clinical psychologist. She's been working at Salem Hospital in the physical medicine rehab and sleep clinic for over 25 years. And she also maintains a private practice in the Portland area. She earned her PhD from the University of Iowa and specializes in treating chronic pain, sleep disorders, mood disorders, and psychosomatic conditions. And I had the pleasure of getting to know Kate through her co-facilitation of a mindfulness and compassion-based course that takes place at the Providence ALS Center and is open to people who are living with ALS and their support team, and has been going on for 5 years now. And it's really, really great class. So it's my pleasure to know Kate, and her expertise is vast. And so I'm really excited that she's here to connect with us today. Just want to remind those of you who are viewing from home, you are more than welcome to submit any questions that you have for Kate, or anything that you might like to chat in the Facebook chat bar. And we're going to have time at the end to ask questions and connect. So if we don't get to your question today, I promise we'll get to it later on and do our best to get all of those questions answered. I also want to just point your attention to a handout that Kate will be referencing that she has created for all of us, and that's going to be also in the Facebook Live link, and will also be available after on our website with the recording of this video. So we'll invite you to check that out as well. And with that, I will go ahead and turn it over to Kate. And again, thank you so much, Kate, for being here. We are really excited.
Thank you, Cassy. Welcome, everybody. I'd like to focus my time with you today on ways to build resilience as we face COVID-19. And resilience is defined as the ability to adapt in positive ways as we face adversity. We are all facing challenges to adapt, whether those challenges are coming from ALS or COVID, or even scarcity of resources for finances, food, shelter. If you are facing these additional challenges for resources, I'm sorry, and I especially direct you to open the link on this Facebook page. Earl Blumenauer's office has compiled resources for securing food, income assistance, shelter, free delivery services, mental health resources, crisis intervention services, access to educational and entertainment resources for families and kids of all ages. It also has the CDC, state and federal sites that update the information that we're gathering on COVID regularly. Before we discuss the tools for how to build and extend our resilience, let's understand why we need those tools. Both ALS and COVID-19 may sustain stress in unhealthy ways. So it's true that we don't have a cure for COVID right now. So it poses an ongoing challenge. And it's also true that ALS is an added risk should one contract COVID. Yet we have learned ways to reduce our risk of exposure with physical distancing, maintaining clean environments, keeping our hands, sneezes, and coughs from transmitting possible pathogens. We are learning regularly and sharing daily information as to how to enhance our safety, thanks to the many people around the world who are dedicating a lot of time and energy to this cause. So in the midst of COVID, as well as in the midst of living with ALS, you likely already have been taking action to enhance your safety and your care. This is positive adapting. This is building resilience. And this is the premise that I'd like to continue to build on today. What can we do to promote our safety? And what can we do to continue to care for ourselves so as not to become overwhelmed in the face of ongoing stress in this adaptation? In any stressful situation, our brains make appraisals subconsciously out of our awareness, and they do it regularly. Our brains do this regularly. The appraisal system asks two questions. One, is this situation potentially harmful? And two, can I handle it? Whether we're perceiving real or possible danger, our bodies respond the same way. Our bodies produce chemicals that increase our fight, flight, freeze responses, our most basic survival instincts. And this fight, flight, freeze energy is both a motivator and an energizer to restore safety. Just like a rabbit may scurry, flee a situation, a tiger may fight and pounce and attack, a possum or a deer may freeze in stillness. These are all contrasting ways in which safety is attempting to be restored. And I bring, oh, there's my cat. And I bring up these examples because people living under the same roof may have a tendency to express their stress response in one of these distinct ways. Whereas threat appraisals and stress responses are vital for our survival because they energize us to seek safety, if the stress response is frequent or prolonged, we can fall under a chronically activated threat response. We can recognize that we're under a chronic activation of a stress response when we overreact to what typically might be considered minor stress, or when we encounter problems with our digestion, our mood, our sleep. So as you address the challenges of living with COVID and ALS, you need breaks, you need shifts out of the stress response so that you can rebalance physically, emotionally, and mentally. And as a tool to use with your family to demonstrate where your stress level is at, I would refer you to Dan Siegel's YouTube video that you'll see in the link on the Facebook page, because he depicts what I'm going to show you here now, a hand model of the brain. So you can either make this model along with me or just watch. The forearm connecting to the palm is considered the spinal cord connecting to our brainstem. The thumb tucking in to our palm is considered to be the limbic system. The limbic system and the brainstem are largely controlling our emotional reactions and our stress response. And these two systems largely happen out of our conscious awareness. They're responding and adapting pretty much subconsciously. The hand wrapped around the backside of the hand and the fingers wrapping around the thumb and touching the palm are considered our cortex, the area of the brain that's right underneath the skull. It's where we do all of our conscious thinking. We take in information from our environment about what we're seeing and smelling and tasting and feeling. We store our memories here. We problem solve here. All of our higher order processing goes on here. And then he describes that the second knuckle on down to the fingertips represents the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain right here behind our eyes. And he refers to this as the wise brain. And the reason why it's the wise brain is because it, if you can see, it has connections. These fingertips rest on the brainstem, and they have connection to the limbic system. And so they serve as a bridge between the lower, more subconscious parts of the brain, connecting to the conscious parts of the brain. And in the face of a stress response, our prefrontal cortex can kind of give us an indication of where we are at in terms of how our body is responding or how our emotions are building under stress. But what's so interesting is that sometimes when the intensity of our stress response becomes quite great, or our emotions become quite great, the blood flow leaves the prefrontal cortex, and as Dan Siegel says, we flip our lids. Literally, we lose the capability of reasoning and we just react. It's because the blood flow is going down to service the stress response, the fight, flight, freeze response, and these strong emotions. So keeping the prefrontal cortex online is what our stress reduction methods attempt to do, either because we're moving this energy and releasing it from the body, or because we are offering some higher cortical processing to keep our prefrontal cortex online. Let me give you some examples. In your resource page, you'll find that there's a lot of different brief techniques. One of them is to wear an essential oil on your wrist. This is one that I hope you would like to smell, because when you notice yourself becoming stressed or feeling an intense emotion, smelling your wrist allows some of that higher order processing to take in information separate from just what our stress response is building, our emotions are feeling. Similarly, if you take and direct your attention out into the environment, and you could do that with me right now, and try to find your most favorite color, or become curious about the weather or anything that your eyes might be drawn to in the environment. The attention is now moving outside and reconnecting to your environment, engaging these higher order cognitive functions, and taking away from just the internal reactivity that our stress response tends to pull us into. Another brief method involves taking your hands out to your sides. And as you breathe in, expanding, as you breathe in, the hands going out. And as you breathe out, the hands coming back in. And then repeating this. Inhale, hands expand. And exhale, hands come back together. Repeating this about 6 to 10 times starts to allow your breath to slow down, decreasing some of that energy built up in the stress response. Similarly, you could press your feet into the ground alternatively, left foot to right foot, back again. Literally pressing your feet into the ground is a way of grounding, but we are using that sense of contact to engage a higher order cognitive function so that we aren't just flipping our lids. We're not just servicing the stress response. Depending on your level of activation, you may want a more active stress reducer in the face of agitation or irritation. But if you find yourself a little spacey or a little shut down, you may also want to initiate some movement, because that can increase that blood flow and raise the energy level up in the body and in the mind. I'd like to now turn to an analogy. I want you to think of being on a river. We're going to call it the river of life. Sometimes that river is smooth and we can feel ourselves just being taken along on the current smoothly and gently. And then sometimes we may find ourselves in an eddy where the water circulates in a circle, and we need to stick an oar in order to pop out of that eddy and continue on our river of life. And other times we may encounter rapids where our boat is rocked in choppy waters. I want you to think about eddies as the possibility of being stuck in worry and anxiety. If we think about a situation, a problem, and we keep thinking about it over and over again, we can offer ourselves maybe a tool or a possible solution, a way out of that eddy and on down the rest of the way on the river. But if we find ourselves just mulling over the same old, then we are stuck in an eddy. We can become stuck in anxiety and worry. So if we don't offer ourselves something to either support us getting out of the stress of our problems, or if we aren't actively problem solving, coming up with new ideas to try to solve or resolve that problem, we can spend a lot of time in the stress of circling through the same old. So I offer people the suggestion of using worry time, maybe taking 15 to 20 minutes on a regularly time of the day and spending time purely without distraction, thinking about what it is that troubles you right now. So that at the end of that 20 minutes, if you come up with some tools or ideas for you to try to resolve the problem, you've actively problem solved, or you have set a time limit on how long you circle in the eddy. If you find yourself coming back to those problems during the day, one way to sort of have a small little oar in the water is to tell yourself, my time to think about this is tomorrow during my worry time, not now, tomorrow. And I find this especially helpful for people who lay in bed at night and their minds freely go back into the eddies of their worries. When we hit the rapids, being able to support ourselves to remain in the boat is our goal. It's so important for us to know that we're not responsible for the way the river changed, but we can offer ourselves support to stay in the boat. And keeping our balance as we are being tossed in the rapids, in the waves, is one way to try to remain in the boat. And it's important to accept perhaps some compassion at these times. We have not failed because we could not control that river. But instead, we are offering ourselves compassion because where we are in the river is scary. And it's okay to acknowledge that. It's also possible that the distress of someone else can heighten our own distress. We're wired in our brains to perceive how someone else is doing with what are called mirror neurons. And these mirror neurons, when we see someone in distress that we can't resolve or fix their distress, can heighten our own stress response. It's called empathetic distress. And so what we need to recognize is that a moment of self-care can help us steady and rebalance so that we can deepen our supportive contact with the other who's in distress. There are many brief self-compassion practices that are in your handouts, as well as some brief meditations on your resource pages. I'd like to just mention a couple to you now. I'd like you first, if you would, to just close your eyes and imagine creating a circle of love. And I want you to invite, if you would, people who you love, people who value you or you value them. They can be people you know or people that you admire from afar, from movies or books, from history. They can be people alive or dead. They can be pets. And as you invite in each of these members to your circle of love, think about, they may offer you something. They may put a hand on you for support, or they may stand beside you or behind you. Just imagine them with you now. And as you do so, see if you can notice the steadying that imagining that circle of love provides you. Secondly, you might practice in a stressful time asking yourself, what are the words I most need to hear right now? And then repeat them silently to yourself until you receive what the words intend for you. Working with your own words, or there's some self-soothing statements provided as a handout. You can maybe access some of them, but to continue to repeat them to yourself silently in a moment of distress can be very comforting. I recommend that you regularly will have family meetings. Maybe you already are. It would be good to discuss how to coordinate risk prevention procedures, especially as we start to open up our society more. I highlight Les Turner's website page for people who receive care from the outside for their family member who is living with ALS to try to reduce the risk for COVID. They've come up with some novel ideas for you to consider. The comfort level for exposure risk is likely going to vary between person to person within your home. So making explicit, maybe even posting protocols would be good as they change, as we adapt to opening up more in our society. Having a backup plan can be discussed in these family meetings for caregivers should they fall ill or symptomatic. Developing a group text is recommended so that people can spontaneously resource those remaining at home. Neighborhoods have offered these group texts for providing things like delivery of groceries or lawn care or prescription deliveries, but also on the Earl Blumenauer pages, there's delivery volunteers that do delivery service as well if family members or neighbors aren't available. Family meetings can be a great time to coordinate schedules, plan some fun. It can be a time where every family member is given a set amount of time and you go around and share what may be of concern or a need of yours. And then at the end, a discussion be held to offer support for the needs expressed. It's important that as we develop a team of support with our caregivers and families, that it's recognized that not everybody plays the same role on the team, but all members of the team affect the overall performance. Some of us are relieved that the pressure to maintain social commitments is lessened during this time because of risk reduction measures, and others feel this is just too restrictive. But certainly during this time, we have felt more separate with the physical distancing. And this can increase the sense of isolation that follows from wanting to keep our exposure risk low. Recently, I saw a posting on social media where Tom Hanks and Rita Wilson, the married couple, had recovered from COVID, and it was depicting a picture from Tom Hanks' movie Castaway, where he is talking to his Ball Wilson. And the caption read something like, after several weeks of greater isolation due to COVID, those who judge Tom Hanks as being weird or negatively for having talked to his Ball Wilson might think of an apology. And while I may not be able to convey the ironic humor in that, we all do benefit from safe connections. The circle of love we practiced earlier may be one method to reduce isolation. Pets can reduce that sense of isolation. Virtual contact with loved ones. I read a New York Times article recently that 90 seconds worth of eye contact with another can actually be stress reducing. So that may be a target number for you. But that may come from contact with a neighbor over the fence. It may come from a virtual connection, or a phone conversation where you give the explicit instructions for some friend or family member to just listen as you unburden. Remembering empathetic distress. Within the Earl Blumenauer website, there are numbers to contact for different forms of mental health support. On that resource page, there are web links to telemental health services or apps that provide therapeutic support for feelings of depression or perpetual anxiety that may be disrupting sleep or appetite, memory. Calling your primary care physician may also be a way of getting referrals, because primary care physicians, a lot of them have practicing therapists in their office now. Calling your insurance company's listing of benefits number on the back of your card may link you with some referrals, because they have caseworkers who will call members of their panel to see if they are accepting new clients in order to make those contacts for you. But there's, since COVID, insurance companies have allowed therapists to do telemental health therapy. I'm not sure how long that will last. If you don't have mental health insurance, or you would not want to use those resources, there is on the web, a service that you pay monthly and can have access to telemental health services by a licensed professional for a monthly fee. If you want to check something like that out, Talkspace is is an example of this. At this point, Cassie, are there any questions that I haven't covered?
Hi, Kate. Sorry, getting right
No,
back
that's okay.
on. Let me see. I see we might have some questions coming in, but in the meantime, a question that I've heard a lot of people just kind of posing during this COVID-19 time is just, is there a right or wrong way to be responding or feeling right now? And I think you've touched a lot on that in terms of just the emotional impacts and ways that people respond to stress. But I'm wondering if you can just touch on kind of that sense that that I think just many people are feeling uncertain about how they should even be feeling or are allowed feeling.
Right. The reason why I talk about the stress response being exhibited differently, some people may go into kind of freeze where they just really seem aloof or unavailable, unacceptable, or unavailable. Or some people may become more irritable or agitated, and others may want to just distract, play video games, just not think about it. Those are just really natural kind of pulls to the way that stress can be expressed. And so it's a range. And so if we can continue to talk about how the situation's impacting us, we can maybe have greater tolerance for the way that those are expressed, that the stress of this is expressed. And yeah, definitely being able to access the no that exists right now and generalize it to, no, I don't need to push myself to make life near normal. I don't have to take everything on myself. I need to think outside the box so that I can resource everyone under the same roof, not just try to look at risk elimination. Yeah, it's a continuum here.
Great, thank you. There's a question that came in about when you brought up worry time as sort of a strategy, setting aside that time to worry. Do you have any kind of a recommendation on how often you might set aside time to kind of hash that out with yourself? And then kind of a follow-up to, would you recommend that kind of a strategy for kids, or what kind of strategies would you recommend for kids or teens who are also struggling with this unknown time?
Yeah, worry time. I start out with one worry time a day. And mainly because then you're trying to kind of corral the mind, so it doesn't always go back to what am I worried about? What's the problem? But it could be that you do 2 times a day. The thing I would try to avoid, though, is it happening anywhere close to bedtime. Mm-hmm. It could be while you're going for a walk, so you're moving, helping to discharge some of that stress, and allowing yourself the opportunity then to just think about, but not build up the stress inside. In terms of kids, I'm kind of an adult, that's sort of my area of expertise, but I did find a couple of apps online that are thought to be good for teens. There's Mind Shift, for use of for teens that have anxiety, and Mind Tools for depression, regardless of the age that a person may be encountering.
Excellent, thank you. And we can post the links to that in the Facebook page, so folks who are watching can access that.
They should be in already, the resource pages.
Perfect. Another question just popped in. Okay, when you can tell that someone's in a high stress or anxious moment, do you have any recommendations about how to best help them to calm down, or should you just give them the space to process their own anxiety? That's a really good question.
That's a really good question. I guess it could, if you know that the person's tendency is to want to take flight, you might say, hey, do you want to go for a walk? Maybe just that suggestion of, hey, do you want to go move? Do you want to mobilize this stress? I know the risk is, are you going to seem like, might you get your head bit off, or might you seem like you're trying to tell them to lower their stress? I think it would be great. That's where the little hand sign or utilizing that model might be helpful. But being able to talk about, hey, ask the person, I notice you're really stressed right now, and I'm not telling you what to do, but I really want to ask you what would be most helpful for you right now. So you are in that heightened state of the other. The person reflecting back is doing what the prefrontal cortex is doing, is just offering the observation that it seems like things are pretty full for you, big energy right now. And what would be most helpful for you right now?
Great. Well, Kate, I just want to sincerely thank you for taking the time today to talk with us. I've learned a lot, and I love Flip the Lid. That is just
Yeah.
way cool. I will never forget that. Um, so no more questions at this point, but for folks who are watching or who might watch afterwards, if there's other things that come up or you have questions, certainly feel free to reach out to myself or to any of the other staff of the association, and we can do our best to help you navigate these times and help answer questions and be a resource for you. Kate, I hope that you take really good care. And again, just want to say thank you so much for coming on and talking with us.
Well, thank you. We're in this together.
We are indeed. Well, thanks for everybody for watching. I do just want to give a reminder, we are going to meet like this again next Thursday, May 7th at 3 p.m. And we're going to have Lauren Brown, who is an RN with the Providence ALS Center, come and talk a little bit about clinical management and ways to advocate for yourself in living with ALS during COVID-19 time, and really making sure that your symptom management is still addressed, and that you've got some tools and strategies for dealing with that right now. So we invite you to join us next week. And until then, hope you take care and everybody be safe. Thanks so much.